There have been Black Canadians here for generations.
We talk about like a Canadian sound. What is a Canadian sound? Black music in Canada is so uniquely different than that of our American and British counterparts. But that's mostly because musicians from different parts of the globe and the Black diaspora, they left their original homelands and then relocated to various regions in Canada for a quote-unquote better life. They came from the American South and the Midwest and from throughout the Caribbean. As all of these parts of Black musicality and brilliance arrived in Toronto, they brought with them some of their traditions from back home and essentially planted the seeds for what would then become the Black Canadian music industry of today.
Salome Bays, Liberty Silvers, Michie Mees, Maestros, we have the Cardinals, we have the Chocolaires, we have all these people that made Black music in Canada part of the conversation. Now we influence the conversation.
Are you ready?
The history of Black music is deep in Canada.
How does a Canadian artist get on if you don't have the cosign?
Well, we already knew we were dope.
But they were so enthused by my Jamaican accent, like Jamaican funk, right there, the funk.
Being a woman in this business was a disadvantage at the time. I love the new music coming out of Canada.
We're helping to change the industry.
You can make your mark being exactly who you are.
Halifax, Nova Scotia. Welcome all y'all to Nova Scotia. I welcome you to Nova Scotia. I welcome you to Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia is known to be the largest population of what I call Indigenous Blacks in Canada, meaning our communities have been there for hundreds of years.
1775, we arrived in slavery days. Yes, our ancestors paved the way for the streets. 1815 came a rebel, called me a maroon and settled in him.
A lot of people are surprised to know that Nova Scotia as a whole province, and Canada really, has a lot of deep roots and connections to the Atlantic slave trade. A lot of Canadians aren't aware that up until 1834, Canadians owned Black and Indigenous slaves. But once abolition passed, slaves from the United States began to escape to Canada as well. There was a network called the Underground Railroad where a lot of our enslaved ancestors were escaping to what they thought would be a better life. My particular ancestors, they settled in an establishment that they called Africville.
Africville has its own rich history and unfortunately was demolished and taken away in the 1970s. And there's also a rich history about the things that happened to us during those times. It wasn't an easy time for those communities.
Services end 100 yards from Africville. The Negro here has no garbage pickup, no running water, no sewage service, no paved roads, no public transportation. He pays taxes. The Negroes have been told that they must leave by 1967, when the bulldozers come in.
What they've done to me. It's a part of our history they kept in the closet. Professors never taught the lessons, they neglected, forgot it. They kept it underneath the table, kept it under the surface. Nervous that we were re-emergent. They dispersed us and jerked us out in Africville. Halifax is ill. How can us blacks rebuild when the facts reveal?
So a lot of people don't realize that when they come to Nova Scotia, they're surprised to see Black communities that have still stayed solid and unified for hundreds of years. I grew up in one of those Black communities by the region by the name of Preston.
Left out in shambles, dismantled.
North Preston is a historically Black community, largest Indigenous Black community in the country. Settlers in North Preston came from either, Caribbean islands or the U.S. And their settlers, descendants are still there, me being one.
Remember, MCJ Cool G sent out peace to Canada to all the nations.
Both of us grew up in North Preston. Eventually, we both ended up in Halifax. I was growing up back in, the 70s. That was the time,
I know for me, we had to stay in our neighborhood pretty much.
Yeah.
And it was really racist back then. So we couldn't even go certain places unless you had 4 or 5 guys with you. You get jumped if you're in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
So We learned how to protect ourselves early. We never had any black influences on the radio back then.
No.
Luckily, we had that record store.
Yeah.
On Godding Street. I can't remember who owned it, but
yeah,
we had all the
I think it was
records
some
down there.
African
Yeah.
dude had a record store, and he'd always import, you know, the 12 inches with no labels on them. And if you had a little bit of money at the time, you'd go down and roll the dice, and hopefully you got something. You didn't get a chance to play it or anything.
At my house, we played a lot of funk. My dad was a huge funk guy. And also my family was super religious. We played a lot of gospel stuff when I was a kid. The environment at our home church, if you've ever seen a Southern Baptist church, it's identical. People are up dancing, screaming. The minister is like wailing. And I will say for our community, we're super critical of people who say they can sing. So you don't just go up there and be like, oh, I want to sing. You better be able to sing.
I was raised in the Baptist church. Mom was raised in a Baptist church. And musically what that sounds like is it's a lot of gospel. My mom and all the black people from like my mother's generation born in the 60s and then like my grandfather's generation born in the 40s, you know, they were raised on American black music. They were raised on soul, they were raised on jazz.
Montreal had one of the hottest jazz scenes on the planet, never mind Canada. Outside of Harlem, where, you know, Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk and Ron Carter and all the jazz greats, American jazz greats are plying their craft. Everybody in New York, they all at some point in time ended up playing gigs in Montreal, in Canada. All of this activity was fueled by American Prohibition. In the early 20s and right up into the 30s, Montreal was one of the few places in North America where you could still buy alcohol legally. You can't talk about Canadian black music history without referencing someone like Oscar Peterson. One of the best jazz pianists of all time. He's a titan, a jazz icon. He played with all of the greats.
For myself as a pianist, I mean, what I love about him is just, he has such an elegant touch when he plays the piano. I wouldn't say that he doesn't get enough notoriety. I think he does, but it's quite shocking how many times I'll bring that up and people don't know that he's Canadian.
He wanted to live in Forest Hill, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in all of Canada, much less Toronto, and he was faring quite well as far as his music, you know, putting out records and generating good income, good revenues. And because he was a black man, they were just like, no, we can't live here, go live elsewhere. African Americans that ended up in Canada, they're fleeing the more overt anti-black racism, traces of harsh anti-black oppression, to a country where anti-black racism is still very much here, it's just less overt.
The Hymn to Freedom was written during the upheaval years of the 60s, when it seemed like there was going to be a huge and very awful confrontation in America. I wrote it with hope, because the lyrics personify exactly what I was thinking. When every man joins hands and forever sings in harmony, that's when we'll be free, because that's the essence of freedom.
Salome Bay is widely considered to be the godmother of Canadian blues music. And it's not only due to her efforts to spread blues music across Canada, but internationally as well. When she performed at the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland in 1979, is probably one of the most significant moments in the history of Canadian blues music. She, like a lot of musicians that ended up in Toronto, is not from here. She's American.
Salome Bay is a goddess, a queen, and my mother. She was performing with her sister and her brother in Toronto. The landscape of Toronto was very different. Yonge Street was where all the clubs were, and it was segregated. So the Black performers would come into town, and after they would go to a place called the First Floor Club, and that was co-owned by my father. My uncle, he was a bass player as well, and he said, when you go to Toronto, look for Archie Aline, who was a jazz drummer here. Well, where would Archie be? He would be with his best friend, my dad. That's why she came to live in Canada. So love brought her here.
I think that part I can go. Let me free.
There's something about that Montreux Jazz Fest performance.
Let's get free, sugar. Come on, let it all.
One of the most notable moments in the performance is when she moves out into the crowd and is encouraging the patrons to get up and is dancing with the crowd. And it's so magical. Like a lot of our early success stories, a lot of our icons, our iconoclasts, they weren't even born here. They came from elsewhere, you know? So Liberty Silver, she was born in Detroit, Michigan.
Here's Liberty Silver.
Loving you is easy 'cause you're beautiful.
Liberty Silver is a singer, songwriter, artist, instrumentalist at times. I'm here with a special talent. I was put on this earth to minister, to help people understand through music, song, and writing. It's what I do, and it's what I am. I am from Peterborough, Ontario. We had a very modest home. My father played first violin. My mother was a homemaker, and she made all our clothes. And we went to church and stuff like that. It was pretty normal in the beginning. I went for my first day of school, and I went through the gate. They had these large chain-link gates. And on the other side were a whole bunch of kids waiting for me. And as I went through the chain-link fence, they were calling me the N-word. They were throwing rocks at me and spitting. And I said, okay, here we go. Let's do this. And I just walked through them. I took out my frustration by going down and playing all the instruments my father had down there, piano, and then they brought me a drum set, and then it just kept growing. And he had old jazz records and all different kinds of stuff, and I just started singing because that was my way of expressing the hurt and the pain and getting it off my chest and writing original songs. And it was my escape.
What brought you to Canada?
Well, I'm on a course here. I'm a student, you know, interested in this field in electronics. So I saw this course and came up from Jamaica.
I've never seen an escalator. Definitely haven't seen so much white folks. And we moved in February of 1979. I started school the next week.
The Trudeau government, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, he had loosened his immigration policies so that people from the Caribbean could relocate here. That's how my parents ended up here.
there was no snow on the ground. And then I was in class, and it started snowing like crazy. And I ran out the class, started playing in the snow, and all the students were looking through the window thinking, this black man's crazy. So there was maybe 10 to 15 black families in the whole of Durham in 1979. But because it was Toronto, and because Toronto has always been somewhat multicultural, it wasn't a horrible time.
Test the mic now, Willie.
Mic testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, testing, mic.
Reggae, to me, I move with it. Like, I move with that energy inside. There's something about that. You cannot replace it.
What was happening in the late 60s, early 70s, between the years 1967 and 1974, you have musicians like Jay Douglas, for example, others like the Mighty Pope, Jackie Matu, a famed Jamaican keyboardist. They all had migrated to Toronto. They brought with them interest in playing ska music, rocksteady, roots of reggae that they had grown up with. Now, Jackie Matu, while he was in Toronto, he had recorded this timeless classic song called Wishbone. My father used to go to this record shop on Eglinton that's still there to this day. It's called Monica's, which is one of the first stores that sold black music in Canada.
We had a lot of rehearsal spaces there. Actually, a lot of in our early stages of Crack of Dawn, we were rehearsing right on Eglinton Avenue. All the best food was there. All the top musicians were there.
Everybody who came, like he said, you know, to Toronto and looking to get involved in the music scene, found their way to Eglinton.
That area was our area. Reggae in Canada, all I know is how, you know, my mother, Denise Jones, stood for it. As a Jamaican woman coming here into the entertainment industry, like, she was championing reggae in all the rooms, the rock rooms, the this, the that, whatever. The Juno Awards have a reggae category because she said, hey, Junos, this is a global music.
Denise Jones had a functioning management company, live event company at a time when no one knew what that was. Managing artists, producing artists, promoting artists, putting on live events, throwing concerts.
Instrumental in helping a lot of local artists understand the business, believe in themselves.
But what she realized is, like, there weren't too many black institutions at the time. So even if it was reggae and you had someone who was from Trinidad or Guyana or wherever, it was more like, yo, we're seeing you out there representing us and we're about that. All these industries were birthed because of immigrants, but it didn't mean that they wanted to leave behind who they were, right? And so to be able to have those experiences in the place you're looking to call home meant a lot.
With his latest release, ladies and gentlemen, the Mighty Pope.
With the Canadian sounds coming out of Toronto, during those years, 1967, 1974, it's a blend of the multiplicity of genres, right? It's a little bit of reggae, it's a little bit of blues, definitely some jazz, and then soul music, of course. A lot of musicians here, like the Jay Douglases and Mighty Pope, they're listening to music coming out of Detroit.
You didn't mean so much to me, oh baby. Oh darling, what do you see? Whatever goes around, baby. Listen to it.
The one thing about funk is the bass is just intoxicating. differentiated it from the pop music and the rock music that we were hearing. It definitely had its own groove, its own soul.
Time for Crack-A-Dawn. You know the name of their hit? That's it, right here.
Crack-A-Dawn is an R&B music group that was the first Canadian black group to get signed to a recording contract.
Come here, babe. Put your head right here. Dry your eyes and be together, oh so near. Put your trust in me.
We played some of the major venues in the country, some of the classiest venues, Place des Arts, like you said, Ontario Place of the Forum to capacity.
Because we were with Columbia Records, you know, we were doing a lot of shows involving a lot of Columbia artists like Kool and the Gang.
Yeah.
We did a TV show on CBC, I guess, with Patti LaBelle at the time.
The music makes you feel like moving. It's all right.
Crack-A-Dawn again was a group of musicians that was absolutely mind-blowing. When I say world-class musicians, I mean world-class musicians.
Apparently we were, this is the story that I hear, that we were outselling Earth, Wind & Fire in Canada.
Music venues at the time, they were not so welcoming of black constituencies, black audiences, large groupings of black people, not welcome, and that was made very clear.
Certain clubs, black bands were not allowed to play. They didn't want them there. But having a white manager with us helped to open up a lot of doors. You know, as crazy as it may seem, I'm talking the truth. It is the truth. So he was able to get us into a lot of places. And then when we got into those places, we opened up the door for the other black bands that were behind us. So we were like the door busters, so to speak. Yeah, so we're doing this show. It's a live show. City TV was in its infant stage. We come inside, look at the audience, and everybody just look normal, you know, but it's a pure white audience. There's no black people in the audience whatsoever. But we're cool, you know, we say it's cool, Toronto, we're good. And we go back to the green room to change. We come back out, I'm on my drums. Jackie does one song, and everybody start taking their coat off. And they take their coat off, everybody has SWAT stickers on their arm. So I'm saying, what is going on? But then I hear what they're saying. What do we want? White power. When do we want it? Then they all stood up and started coming down onto the band. And there's a little old lady, what's her name again? All I know is that she saved our lives. Yeah. She grabbed me and him and threw us into a room. The trumpet player's wife, Terry, she was like about 3 months pregnant, got kicked right in the stomach right here, immediate miscarriage. He got hit with a mic stand, 3 cracked ribs. It was nuts.
We built the platform that a lot of people are standing on now, and they don't understand. Like, we faced a lot of stuff. So, you know, when I look at the industry, and I think that a lot of these young cats that are doing stuff, and they don't even know what the elders did to make it possible for them to be even doing this today.
Much like the history of rap music and hip-hop culture, you're essentially making something out of nothing. So the music scene in Toronto in the 80s is one in which it's pure counterculture. It's super rebel music, it's social protest. The first rap single to come out of Canada, it actually comes vis-a-vis an American, this guy Jay McGee, and he recorded under the name Mr. Q. He is not really a rapper, okay? He's a soul funk R&B musician that originally came from North Carolina, ended up in Flint, Michigan, and then came to Toronto because there were a lot of opportunities here. Funk forms the backdrop of a lot of the earliest rap records coming out of Canada, and also the US as well, who were rapping over funk records.
respect you. Just rock to my jam, cause respect is due. I'm like a picture, I hold all my memories. Down with every posse, I try not to keep enemies. Every now and then.
I came from Jamaica in 1976, so in growing up in the west end of Toronto, it was amazing, very grassroots, very where you're from right in your face, very Caribbean. And not everybody from the Caribbean was from Jamaica.
What can I say? Mishi Me is a pioneer.
In the area, making it merrier. You cheer me when you hear me and boost that stereo up. When I rock, I start smoking. The mic is piping rock.
She was a great hip-hop rhymer, but she had that secret weapon because in the middle of a verse, she could break into dancehall. We just knew we had a secret weapon in Mishi that could go up against any American artist.
Ivan Berry was the one that told me to, why don't you be yourself in the studio? You always come to the studio and you're just totally switching to the American. Why don't you be yourself? When you get upset, when you get aggressive, you speak Jamaican. So I waited till the third verse to get the confidence to actually speak with my accent, so to speak. And that's when I send for the dirty. You got me, said send for the dirty.
Push up your one if you are Jamaican. You know your back, you can't take the sun long.
So we wanted to let people know that we weren't American and we were a part of the Commonwealth and we have that little slang.
You know, I remember when Mishi would perform in New York and she gets into the whole reggae toast thing, she kills it. Americans and English people like it when Canadians come out and do that.
You never knew I said she a yardie and travel for miles around. They know what's in town. Jamaican funk.
Between, you know, what I call the Holy Trinity, which is, you know, Mishi Me, Maestro, and the Dream Warriors, at that time when we were young, there wasn't anybody that we knew that came from the city, much less the country, and was able to sustain a career just by being a hip-hop artist.
Ivan Berry, you know, he played a key role for sure as far as incubating Canadian rap music talent. He, like many Caribbean immigrants, you know, migrated here, and it was just like, hey, there's this new sound, you know what I mean? And this is what's happening in the streets, and this is what's happening, you know, in our communities.
People need to understand Dream Warriors were the first hip-hop group from Canada to sell 1 million units globally.
Bienvenue au Dream Warriors of France.
When something is classic, like some of our tunes have become, it's because they still can feel what we're trying to get across to this day. So they feel the power inside of it. It's not just words, and it's not just something to be passed on a top 10 list. It's something where it's like, I remember what I was doing when I first heard Wash Your Face in My Sins.
Let your backbone slide, let it slip, let the rhythm rip while my lyrics leave my lips lazy.
Maestro, the godfather of Canadian hip-hop.
He brought Canadian hip-hop to the forefront.
It was nice to kind of be on the front lines at that early stage in our history anyway.
I go by the name of the Maestro Fresh West. Born in Toronto, raised in Toronto, but I rep Scarborough. I was there from 10 years old, from 11.
Yo, are you ready for the drop? Then drop it.
What attracted me to hip-hop was just the style, the breakdancing. I tried breakdancing a couple of times. It didn't work, man. I fell flat on my face, man. But when I started working on my bars were nice. You know, girls started feeling me. I felt good. Like, okay, I got this.
Take me in my rhymes over different bricks. I should ostracize the eyes of spies and destroy all districts for disguise.
At that time, I was trying to get on with Beat Factory, but they had a plethora of MCs from, like, Dream Warriors, Rumble and Strong. I'd be like at the bottom of the list because they got Mishi Me and LA Love. They got to go through, you know, to try to get their deals and everybody. So let me try my own thing.
When I met Wes, we were at a Roadhouse restaurant called Wizards at Kennedy and Shepherd. We had these like freestyle battles between the bus boys and the kitchen staff. One day they got really good overnight. And I'm like, okay, hold on, what's going on here? How come you guys got rhymes like that just all of a sudden on a Tuesday night kind of thing? They took me into the kitchen and there was this slender kid washing chicken wings in the sink. And they pointed at him and I said, hey, are you the one da-da-da-da? And yeah, that was Wes, right? And that's how we actually met.
His name is Maestro Fresh Wes. He's 22 years old, and he's the first Canadian to release an international rap album. The single and video from the album is called Let Your Backbone Slide, and it's making its way up the Billboard charts in the States.
Maestro was the first star out here, like a full-on Canadian hip-hop star for us, right? Like it just meant something for the city, like it was exciting.
To this day, he's making like inventive music. His whole line is don't make songs, make history. Like he still believes in that. Like a record is supposed to be an event.
Sometimes I fell, but a voice kept saying, son, stick to your vision, keep the composition. Seen a lot of shame in the game, seen a lot of pain with the fame.
No matter what, every one of these guys always had that Canadian identity. The challenge to break in the U.S., it's a challenge. It's very tough.
Agenda, you're prone to give up, and so
Much Music always embraced everything about me. It was really cool. A lot of what I done in 1996.
When we did Northern Touch at Much Music, I'm going to do Much Music TV, hour-long, sit down and songs and all this other stuff. And I was like, oh, they're cool. They did this cool set design, like they had ice sculptures and cutting out saying ice cold and shot clear. And I was like, cool. Then I started looking and I was like, well, why is the guy from Business Affairs here? Like, he usually doesn't come to anything. Then why is this guy here? And that was when I found out that after 35 days, at that moment in time, it was the fastest hip-hop record to go gold in Canada.
It's all about the lyricist, no one can rock a beat just like I. Both sides represent her. CH the IC knows how to rock.
When the world thinks of Canadian rap music, they point to Drake. Now, the thing is, Drake stands on the shoulders of those that came before him. So there are a flurry of Canadian rappers that laid out the groundwork for there to be a Drake phenomenon. Before that, Drake aspired to be Cardinal Official, and he had said that on the record. He wanted to be as popular as
prior to him. He's never forgotten his roots, and the people that influenced him, like Mishi and Maestro, doing black music, and not just black, but like super Caribbean influenced black music.
Cardi's a great personality too. Checks all the boxes without being fake, while remaining true to himself.
Hello, driver. Respect you, boss. But yeah, we are on our way, to Jay Leno. How are you?
I'm fine, how are you? What's your name?
I am Cardinal.
Oh my God, you're the famous one.
Apparently not, but it's okay.
Hey, I'm a 55-year-old white woman, so
Do you know how many fans I have that are 55-year-old white women?
I'm gonna become one.
Okay. Listen, I am the Canadian Cardinal. Very good to meet you, sir.
Well, nice to meet you guys.
All right, boss man.
Yell if you need anything.
All right. We're gonna need to get him some Air Force Ones. That's what we need to do.
The biggest challenge that Canada faces in a lot of categories of industry is our proximity to the U.S., right? To carve out our own identity in something that is perceived
globe to where that was the first time that people gave a shit about Toronto. The first time I met him, Shabba Ranks was like, yo, T-Dot!
And, when all the MCs would be on stage, they'd be like, yo, T-Dot this and T-Dot that. And we're like, yeah, when we go on stage, we're like, Vancouver this and Vancouver that. So we're like, nah, man, we gotta slang it up. We're like, 49th Parallel or VCBC, and, I just said, nah, Van City, I got it.
Some design fine rhymes into salary. All the way from T-Dot to the Van City All-Star. Rude boys treat you like a fantasy. Word up.
Everything is an energy. And that's why any song of mine that you've ever loved, it's an energy that I was able to communicate. Would become, we were just knowing that we had an opportunity to do it. You know what I'm saying? It was important, because it signified.
They've never heard of the Philosopher Kings. I say we were like Maroon 5 in the 90s because we had a live drummer, which is a real sort of defining
characteristic of rock music, live drumming. I would also use the word jazz because of all the amazing musicianship and all the interesting chords and the different textures. And I would use the word soul.
At my black friends back in the day when I was a kid and I used to listen, and I listened to a lot of rock music, they were like, what are you trying to be, white? And they'd use it to ridicule you, right? When you look back at it, it's like, it's so ignorant.
It took me a long time to really realize that my being different was my superpower. Again, I was just living. Like, I was really just like doing the music I loved, wearing the clothes I've...
And Tuku, Shannon, and myself, and Washington, 4-part harmonies over like heavy guitars. So something really different, and they just didn't know where to put us. Like, how do we market this?
This is too rock. This is too hard. She's goth, which goth is such a, it's okay.
Ragged is my alter ego. I got to find voices in me that I wouldn't have found if I was delivering in hip hop. It gave me so much courage. It was the way of me saying, you know what, I'm on my own. It was my Janet Jackson, I'm taking control moment. All hell would have broke loose because I want to play rock and roll, I want to write rap, and I want to live dancehall. So Canadian of me. Old managers was like, what are you doing? How am I going to explain to the marketplace that you want to do rock and roll now?
If you're a black musician and you're performing, punk music, rock and roll music, the scene here is not mature. It's not like America where we have there's something called Afropunk. There's a festival in America called Afropunk. And what it does is sort of showcases black artists that perform what I guess is considered non-traditional black music. Punk, heavy metal, rock and roll.
I like rock music. Rock music is black music too. Let's not forget. So let me seek out some rock videos and let me see if I can get in touch with some rock artists. And I remember being shut out by their managers, by their labels. So it's definitely a huge bias.
What happens when we talk about anti-black racism and how it sort of manifests, itself in this country? The biggest selling reggae artists out of this country, they're not black, they're not from the Caribbean, they're most definitely not Jamaican. It's basically a white guy from Scarborough. Snow, who recorded a song called Informer. That song went to #1 on the Billboard charts, right? Smashed records, and he's a white guy from Scarborough.
I don't care who's doing the music, but it's when you start gatekeeping around who can be included or not, that's the problem. And it's discouraging because I do ancestral work to always make sure that people know that we have always existed here in this musical landscape.
It's about this. It's about what they see and what they think you're capable of and what culture you probably subscribe to.
For me personally, how I've been honest with myself and have shown my best truth is I really couldn't be anyone else.
So how dare people want to pigeonhole me into this is what black is? It almost gives me a little more fire to be like, F you. I'm gonna do like Rage Against the Machine. F you, I won't do what you tell me.
What do I consider black music? Music.
because all music is black music.
Black music is the most valuable commodity in the history of mankind. Straight up and down, do the math.